On a bitterly cold December night, I opened my front door and saw my daughter standing there with snowflakes melting into her hair. My 3-year-old granddaughter was trembling so badly she couldn't even manage to say hello. Emily looked at me with eyes I had never seen before and quietly said, "Dad, we don't have a home anymore." For a moment, I truly believed I had misunderstood her. The icy wind pushed another wave of snow across my front porch. Lily pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, her tiny pink boots leaving little puddles on the welcome mat I had bought years ago when my wife, Carol, was still with us. I didn't ask a single question. I simply stepped aside. "Come inside, both of you." Emily hesitated for a second. "Dad." "Now." She slowly walked in, carrying Lily while I closed the door tightly against the freezing air. The old furnace started up with its familiar rumbling sound, and warm air slowly spread through the house. It carried the gentle smell of coffee and cinnamon because I had baked a fresh batch of snickerdoodles that afternoon. Carol used to bake them every December, and after she passed away, I kept that tradition alive because it made the house feel a little less empty. Lily's tiny hands had almost turned purple from the cold. I knelt beside her. "Hey there, sweetheart." She looked up at me. "Hi, Grandpa." Her lips were still shaking. "Let's get these wet clothes off, okay?" She nodded quietly without saying anything else. I wrapped her in one of the thick quilts Carol had sewn years earlier and carried her over to the couch beside the fireplace. Emily remained standing in the middle of the living room, still wearing her soaked winter coat as though she wasn't certain she was welcome there. "Emily," she slowly looked at me. "Take your coat off." That simple sentence was enough. She started crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears she had been holding back for far too long. I filled the kettle and started making hot chocolate while she changed into one of Carol's old sweatshirts. Emily had always loved borrowing that sweatshirt whenever she came to visit because it still carried the comforting smell of fabric softener Carol always used. A few minutes later, Lily had fallen asleep curled against the armrest, holding tightly onto the stuffed rabbit she had managed to grab before leaving the house. Emily stared into her mug for almost 5 minutes before she finally spoke. "It happened so quickly." I stayed quiet. People usually tell the truth when nobody interrupts them. "It started after dinner." She wrapped both hands around the warm mug as if she needed something solid to hold. "Derek said someone was coming over." She paused. "I thought maybe it was one of his co-workers, maybe a friend." She swallowed. Instead, a woman walked through the front door carrying an overnight bag. Emily looked down. She smiled at me. Her voice became softer. She actually smiled. "What did Derek say?" "He said, 'Emily, this is Claire.'" Emily gave a short, empty laugh that carried no happiness at all. I honestly thought he was joking. I could easily picture my son-in-law standing there wearing that smug smile he sometimes had whenever he believed he was the smartest person in the room. Emily continued. Then his mother walked into the kitchen. Nancy Collins. Even hearing that name inside my own thoughts made my chest tighten. Emily took another slow sip of hot chocolate before speaking again. She looked at Claire, then she looked at me and said, "You should probably start packing before it gets too late." "What did you say?" Emily shook her head. I laughed. Another bitter smile crossed her face. I honestly believed they were playing some horrible joke. But nobody laughed. The whole room went silent except for the old grandfather clock near the dining room. Nancy walked upstairs. A minute later, she came back carrying black contractor trash bags. Then she started folding my clothes. Emily's voice cracked. "My sweaters. Lily's pajamas. Our Christmas decorations." She looked toward her sleeping daughter. "You remember the ornaments Lily made in preschool?" I nodded slowly. Nancy packed those too. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Carol had always believed Christmas ornaments held memories better than photographs ever could. Apparently, Nancy didn't care about memories. Emily wiped away another tear. I asked Derek if he'd completely lost his mind. What did he say? He told me Claire was moving in. When? After Christmas. Emily looked straight at me. Then he smiled. Actually, why wait? Something twisted deep inside me. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was disbelief. He walked over to the Christmas tree. Emily spoke those words so quietly they almost disappeared. He unplugged it. The lights went out. She stared into her mug again. Lily looked up at him and asked why Daddy turned Christmas off. Neither of us spoke for several long seconds. Finally, I asked, "What did Claire do?" "Nothing," Emily answered without looking up. She just stood there like she was waiting for a hotel room to be cleaned before checking in. She kept staring at the floor. Nancy packed almost everything. My clothes, Lily's toys, our bathroom supplies. She laughed bitterly again. She even folded my winter scarf. I could almost hear Carol's voice in my mind. Some people confuse cruelty with strength. The room became completely silent except for the crackling fire in the fireplace and the soft humming sound of the furnace working against the winter cold outside. Snow continued falling beyond the windows, covering everything in white, while inside my house my daughter sat trying to understand how her entire life had fallen apart in just one evening. I looked over at Lily sleeping peacefully under Carol's quilt. She had no idea that everything familiar to her had disappeared within a few hours. Children that young don't understand betrayal. They only understand whether they feel safe or scared. Right then, wrapped in that old quilt beside the fireplace, she finally looked safe again. Emily slowly rubbed her eyes. I kept thinking he would stop me. She stared into the mug again. I thought maybe he'd realize what he was doing. He never did. He just stood there. She took a slow breath. While his mother kept filling those trash bags. Every time she tied one shut, it felt like another part of my life was being thrown away. I listened without interrupting. There wasn't anything I could say that would make that night disappear. I packed Lily's favorite rabbit before Nancy could throw it in another bag. Emily glanced toward the couch where the stuffed rabbit rested beside her sleeping daughter. That's the only thing I remembered to grab. Her voice became quieter. I forgot my photo albums. I forgot my wedding pictures. I forgot Mom's Christmas recipe book. That sentence hit me harder than the others. Carol had written every holiday recipe by hand. The pages were stained with vanilla, cinnamon, and butter from years of baking together. Emily noticed my expression. I'm sorry, Dad. I gently shook my head. No. You have nothing to apologize for. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. When we walked outside, she continued, it had already started snowing. Lily asked if we were going somewhere fun. Emily closed her eyes. I told her we were going to Grandpa's house. Lily smiled. She said Grandpa always makes the best hot chocolate. A tiny smile appeared on my face despite everything. Carol used to say children could still find light even in the darkest moments. Maybe she had been right. Emily leaned back in the chair. I didn't know where else to go. You came to the right place, I said quietly. She looked at me as though she wasn't sure she deserved to hear those words. I don't want to be a burden. You aren't. I don't know how long we'll need to stay. As long as it takes. Fresh tears filled her eyes again. I thought I had failed. I reached across the table and gently placed my hand over hers. Losing your home because someone else made a cruel choice isn't failure. She looked down at our hands. I kept wondering what I did wrong. You didn't cause this. She didn't answer. Outside, the wind hit the windows hard enough to rattle the old glass. Inside, the warmth from the fireplace filled every corner of the room. For the first time since walking through my front door, Emily let herself breathe. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't okay. But she wasn't alone anymore. I looked around the house Carol and I had built together over decades. It wasn't the biggest house. It wasn't fancy. But it was full of memories, kindness, and love. And as I watched my daughter and granddaughter sitting safely inside while the snowstorm continued outside, I quietly promised myself something. Whatever Derek thought he had taken from them, he wasn't going to take their future too. Not while I was still standing. What do you mean? It means you spend the next 10 years showing up. You don't miss birthdays. You don't cancel weekends because something else seems more exciting. You tell the truth every time. You pay your support without complaining. You become someone she can truly depend on. I stepped a little closer. You stopped being my son-in-law months ago. That part of our lives is finished. But you'll always be Lily's father. What kind of father you choose to become from this moment on, that's still your decision. His eyes filled with tears. He gave one slow nod. Thank you. I wasn't thanking you. I was giving you responsibility. I know. He reached out his hand. For a brief moment, I looked at it. A few months earlier, I would have turned away. This time, I shook it. Not because everything had been forgiven, but because holding on to hate had already taken too much from all of us. He climbed back into his truck. Before he started the engine, he rolled the window down one last time. I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I could take that night back. I believe you, but wishing isn't the same as changing. No, it isn't. Then he drove away. I stood there and watched until the truck disappeared around the corner and was completely out of sight. A few minutes later, the back door opened. Lily came running outside wearing a pair of tiny gardening gloves that were far too big for her little hands. Grandpa! She held up a small packet of sunflower seeds with the biggest smile on her face. Can we plant these? We sure can. Emily walked out onto the porch carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. She looked toward the empty driveway before turning to me. Was that Derek? Yeah. What did he want? I thought about everything we had talked about over the past several minutes. He wanted a second chance. Emily didn't ask whether I had given him one. She already understood something important. Second chances aren't gifts that someone simply hands you. They're opportunities that have to be earned through actions, not words. As the summer passed, little by little, life slowly settled into a new rhythm. Emily finalized the divorce. The marital home was eventually sold under court supervision, and after the debts were handled through the legal process, she received the share that rightfully belonged to her. She used part of the money as a down payment on a modest townhouse only 15 minutes away from my house. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. It was hers. It was a place where she and Lily could finally feel safe without worrying about what tomorrow might bring. That August, she returned to teaching full-time. Her students absolutely adored her. She smiled more often, she laughed again. She slowly became the woman I remembered before so much pain had entered her life. Lily started preschool. At first, she was nervous. She held Emily's hand tightly on the first morning, but after just a few days, she began running toward the classroom with excitement instead of fear. The nightmares that had once interrupted her sleep became less frequent. The nights grew quieter. Eventually, they disappeared altogether. Weekends became our favorite time together. She still came over to help me in the garden every Saturday morning. She loved digging tiny holes for flowers and watering plants, even when she accidentally sprayed more water on herself than on the vegetables. The tomatoes slowly turned bright red. The cucumbers climbed higher along the fence. The peppers grew bigger every week. The sunflower seeds we planted together pushed through the soil, stretching toward the sky until they stood much taller than Lily herself. Every few days, she would run outside just to see how much they had grown. Grandpa, they're taller again! They sure are. I think they're trying to touch the clouds. Maybe they are. She laughed every single time. One warm Saturday afternoon, she stood at the top of my driveway holding onto her little bicycle. The training wheels had finally come off. Emily stood nearby looking nervous. You've got this, she encouraged. I stayed a few feet away, ready to help if she needed me. Lily took one deep breath. Then she pushed off. For the first few seconds, the bike wobbled from side to side. My heart nearly stopped. Then something amazing happened. She found her balance, her legs kept pedaling. The bicycle rolled smoothly down the driveway without falling once. Halfway down, she looked back over her shoulder with the biggest smile I had ever seen. Grandpa, I did it! I laughed so hard that my eyes filled with tears. Not because she had learned to ride a bicycle, because I realized just how far all of us had come. Months earlier, I had imagined victory in a completely different way. I thought it would come inside a courtroom. I imagined a judge delivering the perfect ruling. I imagined seeing Derek finally face every consequence for the choices he had made. I believed justice alone would somehow heal everything. I was wrong. This was victory. A little girl laughing freely under the warm sunshine without fear. A daughter smiling because she finally believed tomorrow could be brighter than yesterday. A family finding peace after believing it might never come again. As I've grown older, life has taught me something I wish more people truly understood. Real revenge isn't about destroying someone else's life. It isn't about making them suffer forever. It isn't about spending years holding on to anger until it becomes part of who you are. Real revenge is refusing to let the people you love continue living under someone else's cruelty. It's choosing healing instead of endless bitterness. It's protecting your family instead of feeding your anger. Justice gave my daughter her rights back. The legal system helped her rebuild her future. Time slowly gave her peace. Love gave her strength. Hope gave her the courage to keep moving forward. And seeing my granddaughter laugh again, watching her run through the yard without fear, hearing her talk about flowers, school, bicycles, and tomorrow instead of nightmares and sadness, that was worth more than any courtroom victory could ever be. Some wounds leave scars that never completely disappear, but scars also remind us that healing is possible. They remind us that we survived. They remind us that even after the darkest seasons, life can still grow again. Just like the sunflowers in our garden reaching higher every single day. I still think about everything that happened from time to time. Some memories never completely fade, but they no longer control our lives. They no longer decide our future. Instead, every new birthday, every family dinner, every school event, every holiday, every laugh shared around the table becomes another reminder that love is stronger than fear when people choose to protect one another. Derek still had a long road ahead of him. Whether he truly changed was something only time could answer. His words no longer mattered nearly as much as his actions. If he wanted to become the father Lily deserved, he would have to prove it one day at a time, year after year. That responsibility belonged to him. The rest belonged to us. Our job was no longer to look backward. It was to keep moving forward, to build a life filled with peace, to protect the happiness we had fought so hard to reclaim, to make sure Lily grew up knowing that love should always feel safe, honest, and kind. If you've ever had to stand between your family and someone who crossed the line, I'd truly love to hear your story. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you and the people you love always find your way back to peace, hope, and happier days together.